Hello, this is Podcasting in 3 Easy Steps with me, Juliana.
And me, Susie. We've spent years creating award-winning podcasts, and now we want to share what we've learned with you to help you get your podcast out of your head and into the ears of your audience.
In each short episode, we'll give you 3 simple steps to create and market an awesome podcast that your listeners will enjoy.
We're passionate about podcasting and the power it has to connect with your clients and community and transform your business.
I'm Juliana, and in this episode, I'm going to be looking at how to choose a name for your podcast. With an explosion in the number of podcasts out there, coming up with an original and memorable name is becoming increasingly difficult. So the first step is to check and see if there's already a podcast out there with the same name that you're thinking of. You may think that you've already got a brilliant name for your podcast, but please see if it's already being used. It isn't necessarily a deal breaker if another podcast already has the same name, because it might be an old podcast feed, it might be for a completely different industry. But be warned, if there is another podcast out there with a name you want to use, your podcast may be mistaken for that podcast or brand. So the first thing to do when you have a name in mind is to search on the main podcast directories, which are Apple and Spotify. Search in Google, Instagram, Twitter and other social media platforms so you can see if the podcast name is already being used and if the domain name and social media handles are available. Step 2 is to make sure you can say the name. Say it out loud. How does it sound? Are you happy with how it sounds? Is it easy to say? Behind the Balance Sheet was a podcast I launched a few years ago, but the name was really difficult to say. And the business podcast that I present, one of the sponsors' name, is also quite difficult to say. You're going to be saying this name a lot along with your own name, so please make sure you're happy with how it sounds and make sure you can say it easily. And step 3 is to keep it short and sweet. Aim for 4 words or less. As mentioned before, you'll need to be able to say it easily. Try and avoid including the word "the" in the title. And remember, it's got to fit onto your artwork or image that you use for your podcast, so keeping it shorter will make that a lot easier. Here are a few ideas of podcast names for inspiration. Brexitcast, The Missing Crypto Queen, which was a podcast I love and would highly recommend you checking it out. Happy Place by Fern Cotton, Feel Better, Live More, You, Me and the Big C, and finally Masters of Scale. And if you're completely stuck for ideas, try out a name generator. There's a link to one in our show notes. So thank you for listening to Podcasting in 3 Easy Steps. Let us know how you get on with choosing a name for your podcast. We've got loads more episodes to come, so please hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you've enjoyed this episode and found it useful, please give us a 5-star rating and share a review. It really helps other people discover the podcast and helps them to start their own.